Hi, my name is Troy Carruthers, and after almost 30 years here working at the Darley Company, I am really excited today to show you a new vehicle that Darley's rolling out of here, headed east to the North Evans Fire District in New York State. North Evans is a nice little town just south of the Buffalo area in New York State over on the west side, and they've bought a vehicle from us that I'm pretty excited to show you today. Like I say, after about 30 years of working here, most of the fire trucks we build are, nice and shiny, but they're almost always red. And I love red fire trucks as much as the next guys, so anytime something a little different comes along, it's kind of cool. So much like the color of my Darley shirt here, this vehicle is what I'd like to call Raptor Blue. So I'm sitting in a Ford F550, a 2020 Ford F550 4x4. It's an extended cab chassis. We have a Darley 1,000 gallon per minute LSM fire pump on board with a Foam Pro 2001 foam injection system to bring this water to life and really give it a lot more capability on a fire scene. And we've put a little bit of special lift kit and some special tires and wheels on this chassis that I'm excited to show you. So over about the next hour or so, sit back and enjoy learning all about this new Darley Quick Attack for North Evans Fire District. Thank you. So here it is. Darley job 3449 for North Evans Fire District in North Evans, New York. Isn't that rig pretty? We've got the Ford Raptor Blue paint job with some sign gold lettering and gold striping down the sides. That truck just pops. We've got a custom aluminum front bumper with a super single tire and wheel kit installed with a few inches of lift to make room for these 40-inch tall Continental MPT 81 tires. 20-inch rims, and with that lift kit, that gets us enough ground clearance where we can seriously take this thing off-road if needed. So some of the specs on this vehicle include the 330 horsepower 6.7 liter diesel engine from Ford. Again, this has the 10-speed Ford automatic transmission, which is new here in 2020. We have the Darley LSM 1,000 gallon per minute rated midship fire pump. It's a split shaft type fire pump for stationary pumping operations. As I said, 1,000 gallons per minute is what its rating is capable of. We have a 320 gallon water tank with an additional 25 gallons of storage for Class A foam. We've got our complement of 3 suction hoses up on top, as well as a 20-foot 3-section sliding ladder, folding ladder, and a 8-foot roof ladder. We have 3 different crosslays, 2 of them to hold 1.5 inch or 1 3/4 hose, and the rear crosslay to hold 2.5 inch hose. There's also a booster reel in the rear compartment. And speaking of compartments, we have 3 very spacious compartments here on the driver's side of the vehicle, all currently shown in the closed position. Note the very clean lines of this vehicle, starting from the front. How the bumper flows into the fender and how the fender flare flows into the running board. And then how the cab running board flows into the pump module running board into the lower corner of the front of the body, which then steps up into the rear, where we then have a couple of the folding wheel chock brackets that continue the line of the body. Here are those same 3 driver's side compartments shown in the open position, with the front compartment called number 1, the overwheel compartment number 2, and the rear compartment number 3. Back in number 3, you can see we have 2 adjustable height aluminum shelves. The overwheel well compartment number 2 has 4 SCBA storage brackets for SCBA air packs. We also have the diesel fuel fill stainless steel door covering the fuel fill just below that, along with a Whelen TLIR flashing warning light. And that front compartment, number 1, has 2 slide-out trays and an adjustable height shelf above them. Also in that upper regions of that compartment, you can see we've got a couple of 120 volt shoreline receptacles anytime the vehicle's plugged in on the running board on the chassis. You can see we've got the auto eject plug on the running board. When that's plugged in, this front compartment will have power, and it will power the Kuzmal auto charge as well as the outlets, and give you power to charge anything that you put in that compartment, like thermal imaging cameras or radios, portable radios, or flashlights if you should have a 120 volt type transformer on those power tools. And here's a close-up of some of those components I was talking about: your outlets, your battery charger, as well as a 12 volt Viair air compressor. A full 1 CFM of compressed air at 100 psi can be produced by this stainless steel 12 volt air compressor that's wired into the master switch on the chassis. So this provides the air pressure for not only the pump shift valve, which is critical on this vehicle, but also the air horn feature that's been added to this vehicle. Both sides of the chassis, both for the driver and the officer, there's a clam switch for activating the air horns. There's 2 Grover stutter tone air horns. Need the master battery switch on. And as I said, there's a clam switch both on the driver's side floor and the officer's side floor for operating these air horns. That should alert traffic that you're coming. Now, if this ain't one of the better looking back ends of a quick attack truck, I don't know what is. So on the back here, other than the blue and gold alternating chevron reflective stripes that you see, we've also got a couple of Fire Research Spectra MS telelights, 12 volt LED telelights, 1 on each side. We also have the arrow stick mounted up just below the cross rail for when you crawl and access up on top of the hose bed. We have a hitch for pulling trailers or also sliding in a portable winch. And then we also have the 7-pin Bargman, which is the trailer plug for again, if you need to tow a trailer. You've got vehicle brakes, power brakes, and power and ground, and all of your taillight turn signal complement there as well. We also have a water level gauge built onto the back of the vehicle, as well as both front side edges of the body. There's an additional large water level gauge. And then we have 2 additional slide-in compartments, taking advantage of the dead space up behind the roll-up door rolls for sliding in long-handled tools. With the rear roll-up door open, known as number 7, you can see we have a Hannay 12 volt electric rewind booster reel mounted in the back with 200 feet of 1-inch red rubber hose. There's an electric reel rewind button inside the compartment, as well as a quarter turn drain for draining out the water in the line if you should need to take it out in cold weather applications, or bleed the pressure off of it as well. I'm going to show you a little closer up here some of the features of the top of the vehicle. Some folding steps on the side. We've got this hinged compartment door here with some long tool storage capability. Same with the driver's side compartment. We got a couple of pike pole tubes built in here. Again, folding steps on each side of the body with lights. Get up here on top of the hose bed. You can see the nice poly hose bed. We've got our ladder rack for storing the necessary ladders on board. Got our foam fill tower, our water fill tower, showing you 320 gallons of water and 25 gallons of Class A foam. We always leave the best foam in the foam tank for the fire department to get a taste of the good stuff. Check WD 881. Smells like orange blossoms when I pop the top of that tank. One of the best foam blanketing Class A foams on the market. It's not the least expensive, but it's the highest concentrated, which means you're going to be crawling up here a heck of a lot less because you're using the good stuff. Here you can see your crosslay swivels, a crosslay cover that's hinged, and then up on top of this very pretty blue Ford F550 chassis. The Whelen LED light bar, Ford LED clearance lights. So very compact truck, but very powerful. Packs quite a punch. Gets you into places that a big engine just can't, which is critical in a lot of communities where getting where that source of that fire is as quickly as possible and getting some soapy water on it to knock down the fire, the flames, and the smoke as quickly as possible is critical. Alright, now we'll show you the passenger side or the right side compartments. Now here we are over on the passenger side, kind of a rear angle quartering away shot. And if that just ain't one of the better looking quick attacks out there, I just don't know what is. The lines on this thing are just so perfect. Again, the way the bumper flows into the fender, to the running board, to the pump module running board, to the front of the body, all the way back, and even the exhaust tucks in nicely in that rear corner here. Just a nice looking truck. Very proud to be announcing the delivery of this vehicle to North Evans Fire District. And now here's a little bit more about these compartments. So this passenger side is known as compartment 4, 5, and 6, starting at the front. Here they are shown closed, and now here they are opened. You'll see compartment 4 in the front has 2 slide-out toolboards, or pull-out toolboards, and there's a slide-out tray on the floor of compartment 6. There's an adjustable height shelf in compartment 5 over the rear wheel well, and another adjustable height shelf in compartment 6 in the upper portion of the compartment. I'll show you these compartments. We got these push the latch down, extend the toolboard out. They both latch and hold in as well as in the out position. Same with the pull-out tray here in this rear compartment. So there you can see the pull-out tray extended, adjustable shelf here, and a couple of tool boards here. This passenger side pump panel you can see is equipped with a 6-inch main intake. We also have a large diameter discharge with a 3-inch by 5-inch Storz adapter, and a 2.5-inch discharge with a 2.5-inch by 1.5-inch adapter and 1.5-inch cap at the fire department's request. But again, this is a 1,000 gallon per minute Darley LSM fire pump. And something else to note here is that because this vehicle does have a very clean emissions footprint due to the DPF, the diesel particulate filter type exhaust system that these chassis have, we do have the need to have a DEF fluid, diesel exhaust fluid, on board the vehicle. So we've routed a very nice fill port, a fill line, to that diesel exhaust fluid tank behind this stainless steel door. So by keeping an eye on the gauge in the dash of this Ford chassis, you can check when you need to add diesel exhaust fluid, but that's very easily accomplished here with this little flip down door. You just take the cap off, you add your diesel exhaust fluid right into this port, and it runs down into the tank that we've mounted over on this side. We've moved it from the driver's side frame rail over to the passenger side frame rail, and made it very easy to access and fill that DEF tank. Well, before I started picking up the cameras and the video cameras and working on our specifications for our vehicles, my former life I was a mechanic, which I guess it's still always in my blood. But one of the things we always focus on here at Darley is ease of maintenance. Not only ease of operation, but ease of maintenance. So we always try to put as large of access doors as possible onto our pump panels so that mechanics in the future can get in here and service valves and service components. So we have a large opening into this pump house. We do have the Foam Pro 2001 foam pump just inside here for ease of access, where you can get at your 3/4 inch strainer and clean the screen that filters any debris that might fall in your foam tank while you're filling your foam tank. We have the foam supply valve with the drain hose coiled up here inside. We also have the calibrate inject hose coiled up just inside. So again, we try to give you enough room to get in here and access stuff. With a couple of quick disconnects on the hoses for the Foam Pro and 4 bolts that hold the Foam Pro in place, you can remove that and gain even more accessibility into this pump module. Now I want to talk a little bit more about this chassis and specifically what we've done to enhance it. Starting at the front, to explain our Max Wasp Super Single tire and wheel package. Starts off by capping the front of the vehicle with a custom built extra wide aluminum front bumper with steel push bar. We put some Fire Research 7400 lumen LED lights into the 6-inch cutouts, one on each side. We've got the warning lights mounted here in the front. This happens to have a winch mounted in behind, an 8000, an M8000 Warren winch with synthetic rope mounted inside the bumper. This can also be a portable winch slid into the standard 2-inch receiver that's built into this front bumper as well. But in this case, we wanted the winch built in so we weren't having to rummage through the compartments trying to find it. So again, custom front bumper that extends right out to the edge of the fender flares, custom fiberglass fender flares painted to match. We also do these in like a black matte finish to match the bumper as well. And here we have the Continental 335 80R20, the MPT 81 Continental tires. These have bead lock, so you can reduce the tire pressure if needed, but you can also run the proper pressure for carrying the 300 gallons of water between the front suspension, the front axle, and the rear axles as well. Same tires in the rear, 335 80R20 Continental. Plenty of wheel well clearance in this custom designed body to work with this tire and wheel package. Something else to note, we put some longer Fox shocks back in here to work with this suspension lift. And we've got drilled and slotted rotors on each side and a more aggressive compound brake pad to slow this beast down as well. Underneath here you can see our water tank sump with a 3-inch cleanout plug, as well as a 1-inch quarter-turn drain. You need to remember, if you're going to drain the tank out completely, you can always flush sand and debris out of the tank that accumulates over time by just opening that drain. Driveline coming out of our pump transmission. Our pump transmission, which is very heavily protected by a very thick 1/4 inch steel frame with a skid plate, so that you can get off-road and not have to worry about damaging your pump or your master drain. So you can see we've got a load of ground clearance underneath this vehicle. I don't know if the camera really shows just the overall size of this vehicle. We like to call it a compact vehicle, but by no means do these super single tire and wheels leave you with the feeling of it being compact. This gets you some ground clearance, this gets you up in the air and gets you some off-road capability due to the super single tires. and wheels. And once you get to where you're going, this fire pump system should help take care of any of the fire, the heat, and the smoke. So lastly here again, I want to go through and show you the pumping operation, the procedure for putting this pump in gear. We've got our main 6-inch intake. We have an auxiliary 2.5-inch pump intake. We got a 2.5-inch discharge on this side. We've got our tank to pump control here for supplying water from the onboard tank to the fire pump. We've got a behind the panel butterfly valve. So you actually have a 6-inch butterfly valve here behind your main intake for being able to take this suction cap off and hook up and draft and be able to hook a suction hose up while you're still operating the pump from the tank. We've got the number 2 discharge, which is the 2.5 on the other side, the front crosslay, middle crosslay, both with foam, the 2.5-inch rear crosslay with foam, a tank refill line. Here's your tank, your recirculation line, your large diameter discharge over to the other side, and your booster reel with foam control to charge the booster reel in that rear compartment. So kind of a lot of stuff going on here on a small pump panel, but not so much that it's complex or complicated. So I'm going to fire this pump up here now. I always recommend before ever putting any pump in gear, you just run around, make sure all of your drains are closed. I always recommend having the pump wet. So open your tank to pump and crack that tank refill just ever so slightly to provide a path for the water to get back to the tank, and that'll keep the water flowing through the pump and keep the pump nice and cool. Alright, so now we're going to climb into the chassis cab. We're going to make sure that our master battery switch is turned on. Another thing we're going to do is make sure that our parking brake is set. I'm going to start the vehicle ignition, start the chassis engine. Anytime the chassis engine starts, it's not uncommon that your low voltage alarm will go off for a second. And next, we're going to put our foot on the service brake, and then put the vehicle transmission through reverse into neutral. Okay, once we're in neutral, we can take our foot off the service brake. Turn the air conditioning down here so it doesn't mess with my microphone like the wind has been doing today. I'm going to release the safety catch here on the pump shift now and shift the pump into gear. We'll get a green pump engaged light now showing that the pump is now engaged. We've shifted the transmission on our fire pump out of road mode, disconnected the rear shaft coming out of the pump that goes to the rear differential, and now we're going to be driving the gears of the impeller through our pump transmission. So next we have to provide it some motion, some rotary motion. We're going to put our foot on the brake and we're going to drop the transmission using the gear selector from neutral into drive. And then if you watch the transmission display, it'll call out 7th gear on the display, and when I take my foot off the brake, the OK to pump light will illuminate. Now we're pumping. We're in gear and pumping. The shaft is spinning. We're at about probably 700 RPM or so, and we can get out of the cab. The two things I want to warn you of: don't touch either of those two pedals. Don't touch your service brake or your throttle. If you touch either of those, that will take the pump out of gear. It'll actually knock it out of lockup and send you back into first gear, and the pump will stop performing. Okay? It's completely normal that at the entire time you're pumping, for this triple chime for Ford to keep chiming, showing you that the parking brake's engaged, you can push the OK button here on the display, which will turn that parking brake engaged symbol off. But all it's going to do is just show you the digital speedometer. So what it's telling you is that it thinks there's something amiss. It's just something we have to live with when we're in lockup mode, but we're not moving. Alright, so right off the bat, at idle, you can see we're at 700 RPM at idle. We're making about 26 pounds of pressure since we have our tank to pump open and we have our tank refill cracked. It's always a good idea to hit the primer
but this pump was already fully primed, as you can tell by the governor. But I always like to see water out on the floor or out on the ground so that I know we're fully primed. Getting any of the bubbles out of the pump helps this governor run more smoothly. Now there's a couple of ways you can speed up the engine and build more pressure using a pressure governor. Right now we're in the pressure mode. I could easily hit preset, take us right to 150 psi. Commonly, you can also slowly increase the pressure just by pushing and holding the increase button. The longer you hold it, the more it'll rise. What you're calling for is here. What is actual is up here. So we're calling for 95, and the RPM is slightly being increased little by little to get us up to approximately 95 psi of pressure. If I want to run at 110, now I can use any of my discharges to start flowing water. You can always hit the idle to bring it back down, bring the speed back down to idle. I want to tell you that the Foam Pro 2001 2.5 gallon per minute foam system is pre-plumbed to supply foam to all 3 crosslays and the booster reel in the rear compartment. If you want water only on these discharges, you have to turn this system off, which turns that red light off. Hitting the red button again turns it back on. Hitting it again turns it off. The white button here moves you through the 4 different modes: flow mode, total water mode, percentage mode, and total foam mode. Flow mode is simply that. As soon as I start flowing water out of this discharge, this will tell me how many gallons per minute are flowing. If I open another discharge, these gallons per minute on this discharge will add up to these gallons per minute, and this will be a total water flow of all of the foam discharges that are opened at that time. Total water will keep track of all of the water that leaves this vehicle, this pump, through any of these 4 discharges. Okay, so it's going to keep adding up all of the water that's pumped through those discharges. Percentage, our foam percentage is set at 0.5%, meaning the liquid that's coming out of your fire hose is going to be 99.5% water and 0.5%, half of 1%, Class A foam. Total foam, this thing will also keep adding up and totaling all of the gallons of foam that is added to your water throughout the scene. So if you see 3 gallons on this display when you're all done, you'll know that you've used 3 gallons out of the foam tank, and if needed, you'll need to replace the 3 gallons when you get back to the firehouse. I usually recommend not cracking open a pail until you know that you can put all 5 gallons into the foam tank, so that you don't have a partial pail sitting around the station not sure what's in it. Okay? So again, flow mode, total water mode, percentage mode, and total foam. You don't have to push this button at all to make the system work. It's just more information for you if you want it. If you want to change the percentage, you can use the up and down arrow keys to change your percentage. Okay, if you want to make more bubbles, longer lasting bubbles, you can bump it up a little bit. But 0.5% is really all you should need. If you want to make a wetter foam, something with less bubbles but still soaks into a sawdust pile or a shredded paper pile, you can bump the percentage down and save some foam. You don't need 0.5% unless you want to make a pile of bubbles. And again, pushing the red button turns it on, pushing the red button turns it off, but it will automatically turn itself on right out of the gate. Right as soon as you start pumping, the foam system will be activated and on and ready to go. It's called the auto on mode. So the key to any training or education program is repetition. Anytime you're trying to learn something new, we'll go through it a few times. So again, we're going to operate this fire pump And we'll start here by, again, just mentioning that I always like to have the tank to pump open and the tank refill cracked to ensure that the pump is getting water right out of the gate. I make sure that all my drains are closed, both on this main pump panel and the other side, the passenger side pump panel. And then we're ready to go. We're ready to go from this standpoint. So now we're going to get into the chassis cab. I'm going to turn the battery master switch on. This turns on power to all of the devices basically from the cab back. You can drive this chassis around with that off, but I really don't recommend it. You lose your air horn capability, you lose all of your light functionality, so that master switch is what allows all that stuff to work. So I'm going to start the vehicle engine here with the key. Again, as I mentioned before, that low voltage light and alarm will come on for a second. Since we don't have the parking brake set yet, this is telling you not to move the apparatus because that light is flashing. So we're going to choose this as our firefighting scene, and we're going to set the emergency brake. Alright, now I'm going to drop my transmission from park into, you got to put your foot on the service brake, but we'll drop it down into neutral. So now we're in neutral. I can take my foot off the brake. I can shift my fire pump into gear. Again, we get our pump engaged, the green light telling us that our pump is engaged. Once again, you need to put your foot on the brake, on the service brake, and then upon shifting into drive is when you get the okay to pump light as soon as you take your foot off the service brake. Okay, so now we've got pump engaged, okay to pump. Don't touch the brake, don't touch the throttle pedal. We're pumping. So now we get out of the cab. Again, to start, we're going to be having about 26 pounds of pressure here at idle. I've hooked up a fire hose to my front crosslay water with foam, the blue discharge, blue hose, blue line. And I just got 50 feet of hose out here. I've also got my booster reel line, the 1 inch, 200 foot long length of rubber booster hose that's hooked up, which will be running off the booster reel discharge here. So we can go ahead and we can bring our pressure up. I'm going to change the preset, which you can do by pushing and holding the preset button, and then you'll start to see the word flashing preset. I'm going to move that down to about 125 for now. Okay, so I've got the governor set at 125 PSI. I'm going to charge my booster reel line, and I'm going to charge this front crosslay. Alright, now I'll show you what kind of stream you can expect from these lines. So one of the nice features with the water level gauge right on the side of the body, as you can see here, we've probably used about 100, maybe 150 gallons of water. And even though the water level gauge on the pump panel is very visible, if you're further away from the truck, these are very handy to see what your water looks like, the water level in the truck. Now, you can also use the total water button and see that we've used exactly 123 gallons of water so far, meaning that we have 200 gallons. That actually represents then 200 gallons of water still remaining on board. These are very accurate ways of telling exactly what you got for water on board. Now I want to explain a little bit more about these nozzles. So the first nozzle I want to talk about here is this Quadra Cup, or it's a nozzle by TFT called a Quadra Cup, and you have the ability to do fog and straight stream, and then you can also extend out this cup, which then draws air in for making a nice pile of bubbles. So again, just kind of give you an idea of what this nozzle's doing. There's a fog pattern. Out here is straight stream. There's our fog pattern. And if you slide this out, then you can make that, you can really feel the air being drawn in, and you can make some nice foam. And there's multiple settings here between 125 gallon a minute for less restriction, 95, 60, and even a 30 gallon per minute setting as well. Now the booster reel nozzle that I have on here is just a simple plastic or Lexan Scotty shutoff, a Scotty nozzle with a fog spray pattern. And I'm running it through a Mad Dog foam nozzle with the screen here that just aerates that foam pattern. So you can start off in a straight stream, and then you can open it up wider, which will then start to draw in your air and build your foam pattern. Give you a nice thick, dense foam blanket. So this is an inexpensive way with the 1-inch hose to make some decent foam, and also still have some straight stream capability. And if you take this nozzle off, as I said, if you loosen up these thumb screws and take this fog nozzle attachment off, you end up just having a nice straight stream nozzle, which has some pretty nice reach. And you can fog that out as well. So even if you're just doing plain water or water with foam, even without the aspirating tip, you can get some really decent reach out of this nozzle. And then just twist it to shut it off. So now back here at the pump panel, you can see our water level gauge is flashing, saying we're getting low on water. And the reason it's saying that is because we've used 261 gallons of our 320 gallon tank. But we're still pumping, we're still up at 125 psi, so not until we break suction will we know that our water tank is empty, which will be at about 320 gallons of water. So now what I want to do is I want to flush out my hose line and just clean out the pump. So I simply turn off my foam system. So now all of these discharges that were open are just going to be clean water. So now I just go back out here to my nozzles and spray until I either A, run out of water, or B, flush out my lines and I'm getting clean water coming out the end of the nozzles. Here we are just flushing out the hoses with clean water. This also then cleans out the pump plumbing for the foam manifold. We've turned off the foam system, so all we're going to be getting soon is just clean water, clean, clear water that flushes out the pump, the hoses, the nozzles, and everything is fresh and ready to go. So back at the pump panel, I shut off my T-handle. I closed the supply line to this rear booster reel that feeds in through the top. Now I'm going to open my bleeder, and that'll drain the water out of that line underneath the vehicle. Now I can take my nozzle off and roll the hose back up, and we'll secure this and tie it up nice for its ride to New York. And once we're just about out of water, you'll hear the pump start to cavitate. When that pump cavitates, you'll want to hit idle. Bring our vehicle speed down, which brings our pressure down. And then once we're down at idle, we can safely take the pump out of gear. So to take the pump out of gear after we've flushed out all our lines, my recommendation is always just to get back in the cab and just tap the brake. You'll see that right now, we'll zoom in on this here. You'll see that we're in 7th gear lockup. Once I tap the brake right now, drops 3, 2, 1. We're in 1st gear. So the speed of the shaft, just by tapping that brake, the drive shaft of the pump, coming out of the transfer case of this transmission, going to the pump, has just slowed down tremendously. Now with my foot on the brake, I raised the shift selector 1 click up into neutral. So now the shaft isn't spinning at all, and we can safely take our pump transmission and move it from pump gear into road gear. And now, upon putting it back into drive or into reverse, once releasing the parking brake, we could then move the vehicle. So we'll just put it in park, and now we can finish wrapping up our hoses. Anytime you're on scene, you're going to want to leave your parking brake engaged, your master switch on, so that all your various warning lights and compartment lights, you've got all your LED compartment lights that'll light up inside the compartment, all your step lights, your panel lights, your scene lights and things, all need that master switch to operate. Alright, so I'm going to roll up these hoses and pretty much wrap up this video process. Again, we're supplying 10 pails of Foscheck WD 881, as well as about a 1/4 tank of foam on board. There's probably a pail and a half of foam still left on board as well. So you can see the total water that we used out of the booster reel in this front discharge was 323 gallons before we started to break suction and cavitate. With 323 gallons of water at 0.5%, that's a little over a gallon and a half of foam concentrate. And again, this unit is turned off right now because we were flushing out all the lines and cleaning out all the hoses. And that foam will last there probably a few hours because of the good quality Class A foam concentrate, the WD 881 from Foscheck. I wanted to show you some more of the interior of this vehicle. So Darley puts a reflective striping inside the door, so when the doors open out on the highway at night, oncoming traffic headlights will light up the door perimeter to help avoid any collisions. We've got the rubber floor in here. We've got our vehicle master switch here alongside the chassis, inside the door. This is an extended cab, so we've got the doors that open out opposite here in the back, and then a small bench seat, primarily going to be used for gear, I believe, here in the back of the vehicle. Again, you can see that nice center console. Next, I want to give you a little rundown of inside the chassis, give you an idea of what the interior looks like on one of these F550s. So the common method for Darley to order these is power windows, power brakes, power locks, We've got extendable power mirrors here that get you the ability to extend and retract your side mirrors. We've got, as you can see here, a 10-speed automatic transmission here on these 2020 F550s. We lock up in 7th gear, which is 1-to-1, whenever we're using our pumping system. Darley uses the factory Ford flow-through center console to get you a nice padded armrest and storage space here for all kinds of your firefighting gear. And then we remove the Ford cup holder and the sink door, and we build in our switches and our low voltage light, the do not move apparatus light, the siren control. We got an arrow stick, traffic advisor built in here. We've moved the USB ports from inside the sink door out here so that you can plug in your cell phone and communicate with the onboard radio system. And then we have our pump shift. So the fire pump shift is here. It's air operated. When you get on scene, the first thing that you would do would be to put the vehicle into neutral, and then you would reach down here and set the parking brake. So upon setting the parking brake and being in neutral, I can now take my foot off the service brake. We can then shift the fire pump into gear. You'll get your pump engaged light, and then you put your foot, this is key, put your foot back on the service brake, shift the pump into, or you've already got the pump shifted, and the next thing you're going to do is drop the transmission from neutral, one click into drive, and you'll see the selector immediately go and call out 7th gear. And upon taking my foot off the service brake, you watch the OK to pump light, it comes on, and now we're pumping. That's the process for putting the pump into gear. Take it out of gear to shut the pump down, tap the brake, OK to pump light goes out. You can then move your transmission selector up into neutral. That will slow the driveline down, stop the driveline from spinning. Then you can shift the fire pump out of gear. Now we're back into road mode. You can release the parking brake, shift the transmission and drive away from the scene. All right, let's go for a little ride. Put her in drive. 10-speed transmission is off to the races here. So today's August 12th, 2020, and just giving you a little bit of a drive demonstration of this Ford F550 Super Duty with the 330 horse diesel engine, 10-speed transmission, and our super single tire and wheel kit, which I don't know if you can tell or not, but we're up in the air a little bit more than most other pickup truck type chassis that are cruising around right now. But this vehicle handles wonderfully, accelerates greatly due to the gears that we've changed. Taken the 488 factory Ford tire or Ford gears out of the front and rear differentials and replaced them with 617 gears, which allows this engine to more correctly utilize that power to get us up and going. So we'll turn here onto a little side road, climb a little hill, put the throttle to the boards, show you that we can quickly get up to 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour, and 60 miles an hour in just a matter of about 10-11 seconds. So, probably not the best thing to be bragging about, but one hand on the wheel, cruising down the highway here, 60 miles an hour, windows are closed, and I'm carrying on a normal conversation with you and I, just as if you're in the passenger seat, without a lot of tire noise. That's the key thing that I want to show, is a lot of people look at these aggressive tread tire and wheels and they assume they're going to be loud, they're going to howl. They're going to sound like these lifted pickup trucks you hear coming down the highway next to you. And we're going to have all kinds of noise being made. When in actuality, this thing really doesn't sound any louder than factory tires and wheels. All Darley vehicles undergo a complete leak test with various nozzles spraying water for over 10 minutes to ensure everything is sealed and there's no water egress.